Let's rewind just a bit. I live in a quiet little lakeside community in Virginia. You know, the type two-car garages, picket fences, folks walking, golden retrievers at sunset. I've been here 17 years, raised my daughter here, planted every flower myself, paid my HOA dues. Like a good citizen, never complained. Not even when they made us paint all the mailboxes colonial gray because beige was apparently too aggressive. But then Karen got elected president of the HOA. She ran unopposed because no one else could stomach the monthly meetings, and somehow she took that as a sign from God herself that she had been anointed supreme commander of all things neighborhood. Suddenly, we weren't allowed to have flower pots on the porch without board approval. She threatened to fine my neighbor $50 because his grandkid's tricycle was visible from the street. And don't even get me started on her noise ordinance memo, which outlawed wind chimes. But last Saturday was a whole new level. My daughter was getting married that morning. Beautiful girl, college sweetheart, backyard reception planned right here at home under the oak tree. We planted the year she was born. We had the caterers, the tables, the string lights, even a 5-piece bluegrass band, and I'd rented a small boat trailer to move supplies across the yard from the lake dock. Everything was running on schedule. Until I stepped outside at 8 a.m. and found Karen's limo blocking my entire driveway. Not just nudged in, it was diagonally parked across both entrances. Like she was daring someone to complain. I walked up to the driver, asked him politely what the hell he thought he was doing. He shrugged, said he was told by the HOA coordinator, guess who, that this was the designated drop-off zone for her niece's wedding happening across the street. I told him this was my property, not the HOA's. He said, quote, "Take it up with Karen." Oh, I would. Now I could have called a tow truck. I could have screamed. But no, I had a better idea. You see, I still had my boat trailer parked beside the garage. Big thing, steel frame, dual axle, weighs over 2,000 pounds when loaded, and just enough space to wedge it right behind that limo, flush with the bumper. Then I took the chain from my backyard gate, wrapped it through the trailer hitch, and padlocked the whole setup to my own fence post. Let's just say when Karen's limo driver came back out 90 minutes later, he found himself boxed in like a Costco cart in a compact Prius lot. And that's how it all began. You ever notice how some people don't just want a little power? They want all of it. That was Karen. 3 weeks before the limo incident, she had just been elected HOA president, and I used the word elected generously. No one else ran. We didn't even know she was running. She slid her name in on a folded piece of printer paper at the last second, nominated herself, voted for herself, and bam, Queen Karen was crowned. At first, she came off as polite. You know, the type of woman who brings banana bread to the block party, but then emails the HOA because your grass is 125 inches over regulation height. That's not a joke, by the way. She actually carried a ruler. Her first act as president. A new newsletter, The Weekly Whistle in Comic Sans font, printed in grayscale with motivational quotes from Napoleon, and 3 paragraphs about how she caught someone using the community pool without an approved guest waiver. I wish I were making that up. Then came the changes. Suddenly, she was rewriting bylaws like she was revising the Constitution. Outdoor furniture must match the house trim color. Garden gnomes were banned as visual pollutants. And get this, bird feeders were now classified as unauthorized wildlife attractants. She fined old Mr. Henderson $75 because his American flag had a faded corner, said it violated the community aesthetic clause. The man's a Korean war vet. Then she started walking the neighborhood at 6 a.m. with a clipboard and a Bluetooth headset, taking photos, whispering into her phone like she was leading a Navy SEAL op. She even left me a passive-aggressive note once that read, "Lovely hedge. Shame it's 3 inches taller than regulation. Just an FYI, Karen." I swear the smiley face made it worse. Now I usually keep to myself. I've got a good life. After retiring from the Navy Corps of Engineers, I bought this lakeside house with my wife, raised our daughter here, and turned the garage into a half wood shop, half man cave. I've got a pontoon boat, a smoker, and a lawn that's greener than envy. But Karen looked at my peaceful routine and saw a threat. Wham! Because I didn't flinch. When she sent me a warning about my boat trailer being an eyesore, I sent her back a scanned copy of the HOA charter, which I helped write back in 2006, highlighting the clause that allows residents with direct lake access to park marine equipment within 25 feet of their dock. She didn't respond, but she didn't forget either. 2 weeks before the limo, Karen started hosting informal HOA workshops on her porch every Thursday. She invited only certain residents, the ones who agreed with her. These weren't meetings, they were grooming sessions. She talked about taking back the neighborhood from noncompliance. She encouraged neighbors to report freely without judgment. She even started a WhatsApp group called the Clean Street Coalition. Within days, my wife and I noticed people taking photos of our mailbox. Our trash can was moved 3 inches closer to the curb. We got a citation for insufficient mulch. Yes, mulch. Then came the petitions. Karen wanted to amend the HOA charter to grant the president executive authority to approve or deny landscaping plans. Issue immediate citations without board vote. Control use of communal property for event purposes. That last one should have raised every red flag in town. But folks were tired. Some didn't want drama. Others feared retaliation. So when Karen dropped the wedding in the park flyer in everyone's mailbox announcing her niece's wedding reception would take place at the Lakeside Pavilion, and certain designated driveways would serve as limo zones. No one spoke up except me. I emailed Karen directly. Hi, Karen. I'd appreciate my driveway not being used for someone else's event. We'll have family over that day. It's my daughter's wedding. Thanks for understanding, Mike. Her reply. Hi, Mike. Thank you for your note. Please refer to Bylaw Addendum 6A passed March 2nd regarding HOA-approved events and community drive access. This will be a one-day occurrence. We ask for your neighborly cooperation. Warmly, Karen Addendum. I didn't exist when I last read the charter. Turns out she wrote it herself and got it passed during one of her porch meetings with only 5 votes. That's not legal under the HOA charter. You need a quorum of 20 households minimum. I knew that, but she was banking on the fact that no one else did. Still, I didn't want to ruin my daughter's day with a legal fight, so I let it go. That was my mistake, because on the morning of the wedding, after all the decorations were up, the catering truck had arrived, the band had tuned their banjos, and right as my daughter was walking out in her dress to take pre-ceremony photos, that damn limo rolled in and parked sideways across our driveway. My wife nearly had a breakdown. My daughter was tearing up, not from joy, and I just stared at that shiny white monster of a car and snapped. You already know what I did next. I rolled my boat trailer behind the limo, blocked it in tight, wrapped a chain around the hitch, and locked it to my own fence post. The driver tried to argue. I handed him a copy of my property deed. Karen showed up 20 minutes later in a pink chiffon dress in a fascinator, like she was attending the Kentucky Derby. She pointed at me and shouted, "This is harassment." I said, "No, Karen. This is property law. You're welcome to call the police." She did. And when the sheriff showed up, I handed him my deed, the charter, the email chain, and a printed copy of Addendum 6A with a post-it passed illegally. See Article 5, Section C. The sheriff told her the limo would need to move or get towed. Karen's face looked like someone stole her Pinterest board. Because what Karen didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that I wasn't just a crusty old man with a boat and a bone to pick. I had receipts, literal receipts. I had documents showing that she was using HOA funds to buy event materials for her niece's wedding. She issued fines without board votes. She approved lawn services for her friends using community funds. I wasn't just angry anymore, I was motivated. And I wasn't the only one. 3 other neighbors reached out that week. All of them had been fined for nonsense violations in the past 2 months. One got a $100 penalty for hanging a wreath in non-seasonal colors. I couldn't make this up if I tried. So we got organized, and we called for a special HOA meeting. Let's just say if you think this was wild, wait till you hear what Karen did next. You'd think after being publicly embarrassed in front of a sheriff, her limo driver, and half the neighborhood, Karen would have cooled off, maybe taken a step back. Reflected, nope, she doubled down, because that's what Karens do. See, people like Karen don't just crave control, they depend on it. Take away their little kingdom and they panic. And when they panic, they start swinging in every direction, hoping to scare everyone back into line. And boy, did Karen start swinging. 3 days after the limo lockdown, I got 6 citations from the HOA. Not 1, not 2, 6, all delivered in a bright red envelope labeled Urgent Compliance Notice. Want to know what for? My trash can wasn't brought in within 90 minutes of pickup. One of my outdoor lights was emitting unshielded glare. My front door wreath had a bow that was non-regulation red. A guest had parked 1 tire on the lawn during the wedding. My dog barked more than 3 times in 1 minute. She claimed she had it on video. And my favorite, my American flag, was displayed at an improper angle. Yes, she weaponized patriotism. It wasn't just me either. My neighbor Linda got fined because her grandkids left chalk drawings on the sidewalk, unapproved public markings. Mr. Henderson got cited again for yard gnome recurrence. The whole block was suddenly under siege. People started whispering. This feels personal, I said. It is. Karen wasn't running the HOA anymore. She was running a vendetta. But here's the thing about vendettas, they don't scale well. Karen tried to maintain her friendly leader image while simultaneously waging war on half the cul-de-sac. She'd smile and wave in the morning, then email 200 fine notices by noon. She even updated the HOA website to include a community shame list. I wish I were joking, but people were catching on. Remember those porch meetings she used to host? Suddenly, chairs went empty. Her little Clean Street Coalition WhatsApp group. Someone leaked the chat logs where Karen had been calling certain residents aesthetic hazards. Yeah, that didn't go over well. But Karen wasn't done. One morning, I noticed my security cameras were offline. Thought maybe it was a glitch. Checked the breaker. Nothing wrong there. Walked around the side yard to investigate. That's when I saw it. A city technician standing by the electrical box. I asked him what was going on. He looked confused. Said he got a call from the HOA requesting an inspection of unauthorized wiring for a possible code violation. I nearly laughed. Karen was now reporting me to the city. I showed the tech my permits, the inspection tag from when we installed the security system 5 years ago, and he nodded and left. But the message was clear. Karen had escalated this to the municipal level, so I escalated too. Remember when I said I wasn't just some cranky guy with a boat? Well, I still had friends in the Navy, in local government, and in law. See, I'd quietly been collecting every email, every fake addendum, every fine notice. I even submitted a FOA request for all HOA communications filed under her name. Turns out Karen had held private meetings without board approval, spent over $3,000 in HOA funds on her niece's wedding, tables, lights, flower arrangements, attempted to revise bylaws without quorum, used HOA letterhead to make false legal threats. That's not just shady, that's actionable. Meanwhile, word spread fast. A group of us, me, Linda, Mr. Henderson, and 2 other longtime residents formed what we jokingly called the Lawn Rebels. We printed flyers, called for an emergency HOA board meeting, and people came out of the woodwork. I hadn't seen half these neighbors in years, but when we opened that meeting, 42 households showed up. You only need 20 for quorum. And guess who wasn't there, Karen? She tried to shut it down the next morning, emailed the whole community saying the meeting was invalid due to procedural missteps and that any decisions made would be non-binding and subject to legal action. We replied with a scanned copy of the HOA charter signed and notarized, highlighting the section that said any 20-plus homeowners can call a meeting with 7 days' notice. Her response? A cease and desist letter, written in Comic Sans on pink paper, signed with kindness, Karen. You can't make this stuff up, but the clock was ticking. The vote to remove her was now officially scheduled for the next Thursday night. So what did Karen do? She held a community BBQ the day before. Free food balloons, a bounce house, and even live music. A man playing smooth jazz on a Casio keyboard. She called it the Unity Cookout. But it was too late that night at the HOA meeting. Karen walked in wearing a floral blouse and pearls, holding a clipboard and a tall latte. She sat at the front like she still ran the place. Then the residents spoke. One by one, folks stood up. A single mom fined for her kid's bicycle being visible from the curb. A veteran ticketed for a faded flag. A retired school teacher cited for having non-regulation mulch. And then I took the mic. I presented the fake addendum timeline, the financial misappropriation documents, photos of receipts paid with HOA funds, her messages pressuring residents into silence. The room went silent. Karen stood up shaking, called it all a misunderstanding, said we were reading things out of context, but nobody bought it. Not this time. And when the final vote was counted, 37-2, Karen was officially removed from the HOA board. She stormed out without a word. The next morning, her community unity banner was still hanging across the pavilion. The bounce house was half deflated, like a metaphor from a sitcom. The HOA website was mysteriously taken offline. And her house for sale. Yep, a big for sale sign went up 2 days later. Rumor has it she's moving to a gated community in Florida. Poor Florida. You'd think it was over, right? Karen voted out house up for sale. HOA reset. Justice served. Good guys win fade to black. But that's the thing about people like Karen. They don't go quietly. They leave a mess behind. And in her case, it came in the form of a bank statement. Let me explain. About a week after Karen left, the new interim HOA treasurer, sweet older guy named Frank, who used to teach accounting at a local college, started digging through the HOA financials. Just a routine check. Make sure everything balanced. It didn't. The numbers were off. Not by a little, by tens of thousands. Frank flagged multiple maintenance reimbursements from the past year, none of which matched any work orders, landscaping invoices from companies no one had heard of, receipts for pavilion upgrades and guest event, staffing totaling over 12,000 for one wedding. Want to guess whose? But the kicker was a payment to a company called Tranquil Sunsets Event Design. Fancy name, real professional sounding. Only problem, it was registered to a woman named Lillian Karen White. Yep, Karen. She'd billed the HOA as a third-party vendor under a business she created and paid herself. That, folks, is fraud. Not just HOA misconduct, actual prosecutable fraud. The board didn't take long to act. They contacted the county fraud unit, filed a full report. A few weeks later, Karen got a nice little visit at her new quiet gated community in Florida from a couple of county investigators. Word travels fast in HOA circles. And when local news caught wind of the story, former HOA president, under investigation for embezzlement, it went semi-viral. Not TikTok viral, mind you, but enough to hit the Facebook over 50 circuit like a thunderclap. My phone lit up like a Christmas tree. Neighbors, old friends, even my former boss from the Navy, all calling to say, "Mike, this story is insane. What did she do now?" And I told them she messed with the wrong driveway. Fast forward 2 months, Karen was summoned back to town for a formal HOA disciplinary hearing open to the public. She tried to delay it, claimed emotional distress, filed a request to appear via Zoom. Denied. She walked in head high wearing all white like she was the innocent one. Brought her own lawyer who looked like he specialized in parking tickets and alimony cases. We had copies of her fake invoices, timeline of her vendor payments, HOA charter violations. 3 residents who testified that she pressured them to vote yes on her amendments under threat of fines, and then Frank, God bless him, presented the final piece of evidence. A check made out to Tranquil Sunset signed by Karen herself, reimbursed by HOA funds for an event labeled Community Engagement Celebration. That was the wedding. Karen's lawyer tried to spin it. Said she was reimbursing for services rendered, that she had planned and executed a successful event that brought the community together. He even said, and I quote, "My client's only crime is caring too much." The room snorted out loud. After 2 hours of deliberation, the HOA disciplinary committee, plus a representative from the county HOA ethics office, announced their decision. Karen was permanently banned from holding any leadership position in a registered HOA anywhere in the state. She was ordered to repay $23,400 to the community fund. Her case was referred to the county prosecutor for potential criminal charges, and her name was placed on the state HOA ethics registry, a database that tracks misconduct. In short, Karen was done. You'd think the story ends there, but here's the part I didn't expect. The community changed. After the hearing, people started coming together in ways we hadn't seen in years. Neighbors who never spoke started gardening together. Linda started a common sense committee to review all new rules before they passed. We added a new clause to the HOA charter. No one person may alter, enact, or enforce rules without a vote and written record. It's now known locally as the Karen Clause. And me, well, I finally got to sit on my porch with a glass of sweet tea and watch my boat gently rock in the lake without a violation notice in the mailbox. Oh, and remember how Karen put her house up for sale? Well, a couple weeks after the hearing, a young family came to tour it. The dad pulled me aside and asked about neighborhood dynamics. I said, "Used to be rough, but the HOA cleaned up recently." He smiled, then asked, "Is it true the last owner got booted for trying to find people for bird feeders?" I nodded. He laughed and said, "I work for Channel 6, might have to pitch that story." So who knows, maybe one day this whole saga becomes a TV movie. It's wild to think it all started with a wedding limo, one oversized, self-important stretch of rented fiberglass that parked on the wrong patch of concrete. But looking back, that limo was just a symptom. The real problem was power. Unchecked, petty, performative power. And sometimes the only way to stop it is with a boat and a chain and a whole lot of patience. Well, Karen may be out of the picture, but we just discovered she left one last HOA document hidden in a file folder labeled private. And let's just say it might explain a lot more than just the wedding. If you thought this was the end, wait till you hear what Karen tried to pull. Even after she left, some people leave behind a legacy. Karen, She left behind a file folder 2 weeks after the disciplinary hearing as we cleaned out the old HOA office, which, fun fact, was just a converted sunroom at her house. We found a plastic bin labeled HOA personal. Do not touch. Naturally, we touched it. Inside were dozens of papers, handwritten notes about code violations to target next, copies of emails she never sent, like one titled "Plan to Restrict Lawn Furniture After 4 p.m., and one truly unhinged document, a draft proposal to install motion-activated HOA cameras on every mailbox funded by a small per-house fee increase. She literally wanted to turn the neighborhood into North Suburbia, Korea. But nestled in the bottom of that folder, almost overlooked, was something else, a signed contract between the HOA, aka Karen, and a private security consulting firm. Apparently she had plans, serious plans to outsource HOA compliance patrol to a third-party company starting later that year. Armed patrols, no but clipboard-carrying, badge-wearing neighborhood monitors. Yes, thank God we stopped her when we did. Once we cleared out the Karen-era paperwork, we took a long, hard look at everything else. And you know what we realized? Most of the rules she enforced weren't even real. That's right. She'd been citing outdated bylaws, mixing in her own made-up ones, and dressing it all up in official-sounding language, like a magician in yoga pants and pearls. So we rolled up our sleeves and got to work. A volunteer committee of 5 neighbors, myself included, revised the HOA charter from top to bottom. We rewrote it in plain English, removed every ridiculous clause, and added 3 new guiding principles. 1. Transparency. First, all meetings must be recorded and minutes distributed. 2. Majority rule, not dictatorship. No new bylaw can pass without at least 51% household approval. 3. Common sense clause. Any rule that contradicts basic reason will be considered void. We even held a neighborhood barbecue to celebrate Linda-made lemonade. Mr. Henderson wore a Hawaiian shirt with zero shame, and someone still don't know who brought a piñata shaped like a stretch limo. It's funny, before all this happened, most of us waved politely and then disappeared into our houses. We knew names but not stories. We shared streets but not time. But Karen, she accidentally gave us the gift of solidarity. Once she was gone, we started organizing monthly potlucks, helping each other with yard work, hosting porch nights with s'mores and wine. We even turned the community Facebook page from a complaint board into a real hub for sharing tools, advice, and the occasional ridiculous meme. Linda's HOA equals Hags of Authority post is still legendary. And every year now, on the anniversary of the Limo lockdown, we hold a little get-together at the Lakeside Pavilion. We call it Freedom Fest. What none of us expected was what happened next. One morning, I get a call from a local radio station. They'd heard about the HOA drama and wanted to interview me. I said, only if I can tell the whole story. Turns out people love a good Karen takedown. The episode aired, then got shared on social media, and next thing you know, we're getting calls from a regional news show. They sent a crew out, filmed interviews, even asked me to pose next to my boat trailer. The segment aired under the title "The Limo, the Law, and the Lawn," how one man anchored a neighborhood back to sanity. Corny, absolutely, but effective. Because after that, HOAs from 3 other counties reached out asking how we rewrote our charter. We ended up putting together a simple guide, how to Karen-proof your HOA. It went viral on Nextdoor. It's been a year now. The house Karen once ruled over was bought by a lovely couple with 2 young boys and a very friendly golden retriever. They wave every morning. They even brought cookies over when they moved in. Real cookies, not metaphorical. Here's a list of your violations cookies. The neighborhood is calm. My daughter visits often with her husband. My boat is still parked right where it should be. And me, I finally finished building that rocking chair home I always meant to carve. It sits on my front porch. From there, I can see the lake, the oak tree where my daughter was married, and the community we saved, not with lawyers or screaming matches, but with backbone, humor, and a good set of chains. People always ask me what the lesson is. Is it about standing up to bullies? Sure. About protecting your rights? Absolutely. But more than that, it's about watching the small stuff. Karen didn't show up with sirens and lawsuits. She came with newsletters, memos, and a fake smile. She built a throne out of silence and got away with it because people thought keeping peace meant keeping quiet until someone finally said enough. So if you've got a Karen in your neighborhood, figurative or literal, here's my advice. Know your bylaws. Don't let pettiness wear a badge. And when all else fails, chain the boat, because sometimes the only way to stop tyranny is with trailer-grade pettiness. After everything, the limo, the fines, the fake bylaws, the fraud, you'd think that'd be the last we'd hear from Karen. But nope, about 2 months after the dust had settled, we got a postcard in the HOA mailbox. White card, glittery cursive font, floral border. It read, "Wishing you well in your continued journey as a community. May you maintain order, discipline, and high standards without me." Karen and taped inside a copy of our old flag angle citation with the note, "Still technically crooked." Even in exile, Karen had one last passive-aggressive haymaker to throw. We pinned the card to our community board and laughed. Karen thought she was keeping order. She thought being in charge meant writing rules and catching mistakes. But what she never understood, and what a lot of HOAs forget, is this. A neighborhood isn't kept together by rules. It's held together by respect. You don't build community by pointing fingers. You build it by extending hands. Sure, some rules matter. Trash cans, yard upkeep, noise limits, they exist for a reason. But when someone turns those rules into weapons, they stop serving the community and start controlling it. Karen's biggest mistake wasn't the fines or the limo or even the embezzlement. It was this: she thought power would earn her respect. She forgot that only respect earns respect. And once you lose the trust of your neighbors, no title, no badge, no HOA letterhead can bring it back. As wild as this whole saga was, I'm oddly thankful for it, because now we're not just people who live near each other. We're neighbors in the real sense. We look out for one another. We listen before we report. We ask before we assume. And we remember that no matter how strict the bylaws are, the best communities aren't the ones with the tightest rules. They're the ones with the kindest people. Now that you've heard our story, I want to hear yours. Have you ever dealt with a HOA nightmare? Ever run into a Karen who thought the sidewalk was her kingdom? Or maybe you've been the one to stand up when no one else would. Drop your story in the comments. Tell us how you handled it or how you wish you had. Let's swap tales. Let's laugh together. Let's learn from each other, so the next time someone tries to turn HOA into harassment on all, we'll be ready. And hey, if you enjoyed this saga, leave a comment. Subscribe for more real-life stories with just the right dash of revenge. Give this video a like. If you believe common sense should be an HOA bylaw, thanks for listening. See you at the next neighborhood meeting with neighborly respect. Mike.